Wednesday's deadly shooting was disturbing because of especially how it played out on live television. The gunman shot and killed a reporter and photographer while they were on the air. And then from his own vantage point, he took that video and posted it online. We're joined now by psychologist Dr. Jude Miller Burke for a look inside the mind of this particular shooter. What do you make, Jude, of the fact that he videotaped purposely this murders?
To me, this is a sign of the severity of his mental illness. And we have such a huge platform today with social media. It gives people that have mental illness problems such a big platform for everyone to see, what acts that they create.
When we're talking about indications into why he did it, he has released this manifesto. He sent it to ABC News a couple hours after the shootings happened. Apparently had been trying to get ABC News to pay attention to him for some time through faxes to the newsroom. In this case, he mentions shootings that happened in Charleston, South Carolina, at the historically black church there, at Virginia Tech with Sung-Yi Cho, and also with Columbine as well. So let me put some of those up on the screen. And what we're looking for here is references to, for instance, he says, I was influenced by Sung-Yi Cho. That was the shooter at Virginia Tech. That's my boy right there. He got nearly double the amount that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold got at Columbine. Just saying. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on to talk about Dylan Roof. And he says, as for Dylan Roof, you want a race war? Bring it then, you white, and calls him a name, an obscene name. What does that tell you about what was going on inside his head before he pulled out that gun?
I think it shows a long history of mental illness, a long history of problems, and my guess is that many companies that he worked for gave him referrals, tried to get him help, but the mental health system is such right now that we don't have the funding we need to help as many people as need help. So you have the bigger social media platform, the availability of more guns, and then also...
And the opportunity to study other murderers,
yes,
other gunmen, is that what they're doing?
Yes, the copycat syndrome. And then if you look at the films, you go to the movie theater, and the first 8 films you see, the previews of, have incredible violence. It's become a part of our society, and many people have become numb. But when you're mentally unstable, these copycat kinds of events happen more easily for an individual.
I want to mention, Jude, that you are an expert at workplace psychology, that you worked for Honeywell and you worked for United Healthcare. Did you ever deal with violent incidents?
Many times. And for a long time, we were questioning, has it become more prevalent? What can a company do in the 70s, 80s, and 90s? And it still is very rare. And I think this kind of an incident scares a lot of people. And people start watching the news and go on Facebook and watch the video. And it frightens them, it frightens their children, and the whole family feels uneasy. And it's very important to know that this kind of workplace violence is still very rare.
But still, a former FBI profiler says, though it's rare, that there would have been signs and signals if there were people close enough to him and spending time with him, and if they knew how to interpret those signs and signals. She described what he was doing when he was fired from a station in Florida, had filed a racial harassment discrimination lawsuit against him, and got fired subsequently. The station said that he had a history of profanity and conflict in the workplace, went on to the station in Virginia, and again was fired from there, even though he had filed complaints. She called him an injustice collector, said he went throughout his day looking for injustices that were done to him. Does that indicate a mental health disorder?
Yes, it does. And when someone has a severe mental health disorder, whatever they experience during the day, they can turn that into something that was done against them. Was he a victim of workplace or bullying by peers? Probably so, because that's another thing that's happened in our media, is that the permissiveness around people being bullied, and it's almost become the norm, and then the social media allows that to happen more quickly. My guess is, though, that the companies he worked for had tried to get him help multiple times, and they had protocols in place. But a company is in a very difficult position of protecting the individual's privacy and then also wanting to alert the workforce that there could be a threat of violence.
Are you surprised at the time that had elapsed since he was fired from this station, WDBJ in Roanoke, and the time when the attacks happened today?
No, I'm not surprised because there may very well have been very few mental health resources available to him. The economy is more difficult for people. So you can imagine how hard it is for someone with a mental illness problem to find another job. So no, that doesn't surprise me at all. And I think for us with healthy functioning and more normal minds, you can't begin to really understand exactly what went on in the mind of this individual.
When we're talking about how close this hits to home, number one, a lot of people watch this unfolding on social media this morning. Two, in the newsroom, many of us came up through local stations, and we remember those early morning live shots when we're out by ourselves or only with a photographer and feeling vulnerable. And for a lot of people, when we're seeing mass violence take place, whether it's at a movie theater, whether it's at an elementary school, that it all of a sudden seems shocking that, wait, I do that. That could have been me. What kind of advice would you have for families who are going to go home and sit at the dinner table tonight and talk about this? What should be our takeaway?
I think it's very important to help your children process what happened, to talk to your schools about what systems they have in place for alerting if there's a critical incident, and also your workplace. Most workplaces today have critical incident procedures in place. The employee assistance psychologist also can be very helpful in getting an individual the help that they need. The types of symptoms people experience from even watching this on the news can be sleep disturbance, anxiety, depression. And so you want to talk your kids through that and really try to limit their exposure.
Let me ask you another question. If you're talking to someone who's feeling angry right now over incidents in the news, who's feeling rage building up, like he describes in his manifesto, do you have advice for those specific people about reaching out and getting help?
There are many mental health resources still available today. There are fewer than they used to be, for sure, but there are resources to get help. As I mentioned, most large companies have an employee assistance psychologist available. Smaller companies have external resources available to reach out to someone and to know that there are other options for getting help.
And when should you get help? He describes himself as feeling like he's ready to blow. If you feel like you're ready to blow, is that the time to reach out and talk to somebody?
Long before that. I think that anyone who's terminated from a position with the economy the way it is today, that's an incredibly stressful position to be in. And so the idea would be to be proactive about your mental health. But I want to emphasize, it's not the normal, the average individual that would do something like this. This is a very extreme situation where the person, the gunman, did not get the help that was needed a long time ago.
Jude, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thank you.